Welcome to Checkpoint. This evening, our discussion today is with Martha Karua, NARC Kenya leader, and we're going to be talking about a number of issues. I've seen your tweets already, so please keep them coming in as we have a state of the nation, as it were, at this point. Thanks very much for joining us on the show today. So let's just start by talking about perhaps one of the big issues we've seen in the country, and this is what's been taking place at the Supreme Court and, you know, by extension, the judiciary. What's your take on the wrangles we've seen? We know that's been partly settled. We're now looking to replace those 3 positions at the Supreme Court. Many say that a lot of what's happened there has dented once again the image of the judiciary. You were Justice Minister at some point. What were your thoughts on those events there?
I think, as a matter of fact, what has happened has further dented the image of the Supreme Court. But I'm very happy with the manner in which the former Chief Justice, Dr. Willy Mutunga, asserted himself, provided leadership, and they were able to resolve that. Because definitely, there was a trap to put the judiciary into a greater mess, leaving an acting Chief Justice who is also a litigant in the court. So as a Kenyan, I'm very happy, and also as a lawyer, that the matter has been put to rest.
Where do we go from here? Because we're talking now about vetting the next candidates for that, and some were saying that perhaps we, got it wrong the first time. We're talking about the mix that we have at the Supreme Court. We had this discussion here last week on Checkpoint and saying, now we're allowed to have persons who have not been necessarily in the judiciary to be at the Supreme Court. Do you think there was a problem necessarily with vetting? Do we need to relook that?
I think it's not a question of whether one was in the judiciary before or whether they've come from outside. It's that person, their character, their value system. And I think that's what we must try to get right, not just about the judiciary, but about every other critical position in this country. And for the Supreme Court, there are petitions pending regarding other judges. And I'm of the view that these petitions must also be prosecuted as soon as is possible. The Judicial Service Commission should either dismiss them or take them forward if they're meritorious. And I think that the Constitution does provide checks and balances. Even where we get it wrong, there are ways to cure that as we go along, like we have seen with the petitions that are testing the Supreme Court, individual judges of the Supreme Court. And I think we shouldn't worry about getting it wrong or right. As human beings, we will trip here, get it right there. It's how we move on that should worry us now.
In a recent television interview, former Deputy Chief Justice Nancy Baraza is quoted as saying she thinks you would make a good candidate for CJ. She thinks you would be non-corruptible and you have some very strong values that may be useful in the position of Chief Justice. I would like your reaction to that and whether you've at all considered yourself for that position.
I haven't considered myself for that position, but it's interesting, and I am touched that Nancy has faith in me. And let me say that when I started as a young lawyer, my first job was in the judiciary, and I intended to make a career in the judiciary. But I had to leave after some time to go and look for money, because when my baby came, I realized I couldn't make ends meet with the salary that was being offered. I needed more money. So I went to practice and get more money. And the rest is history. Whether I would consider returning to the judiciary, I haven't thought about it, because I and NARC Kenya are very busy getting ourselves ready for the next round.
Who would you like to see then at the helm of the Supreme Court?
A person who is equal to the job, a person who has the integrity required of that job, and a person who has a strong will, because it will take a lot of doing, leading the judiciary. Leading any arm of government takes a lot of will. And There are fights all the time. We have seen the fights that the former Chief Justice, Dr. Willy Mutunga, has had to endure from other arms of government, from the executive, from the judiciary, from Parliament, and also other dynamics within the judiciary itself.
So who do you think that possible candidate would be?
I don't want to guess anyone. Let's see who applies for the job.
Yeah.
I might just think about it.
You might just think about applying?
Well, I'm saying it's open to all Kenyans.
Yes,
and I'm a Kenyan.
It is, yes. And you're at a point now where things are different, like you say, from that point earlier in your life when you were raising your children. I mean, you've certainly made an accomplishment of yourself as, an advocate, as a lawyer. You've served in various capacities in government and also outside of it. So do you think now,
judiciary is also very different.
Yeah.
The job of a judge is totally different. It's a well-paying job. Even the job of a magistrate is a well-paying job. So there are many, many issues to consider. But let me say this, that money should never be the motivation. Service ought to be the motivation. If you don't have a mind to serve and you are not equal to the job, it doesn't matter how much you're paid.
Okay.
And that example can be shown by Parliament. I'm of the view, because I've served in a poorly paid parliament and in a well-paid parliament, it's not about money.
Okay.
It's about the people, their value systems.
All right.
Yes.
If you get pressure, this is something we hear from politicians, that the people want me to run and the people want to see me in position XYZ. If you started to hear this from a lot more people than just Nancy Baraza, is this something you think you would consider?
If you find me applying for a job or agreeing to something, it's because I've considered it and accepted it. I will never say it's as a result of pressure. Okay.
All right. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about, what's happening with the IEBC. The talks are there. You've been working with CORD, on a number of issues, including the Okoa Kenya referendum. But we've not seen you in regards to the anti-IEBC protests. Why is that? What are your thoughts on how that was conducted? And we'll come to the Joint Select Committee in just a moment. But, you're collaborating with CORD on certain issues. We didn't see you collaborate with them on this particular one. Why is that?
To some extent, we did.
Okay.
And I said that even though I haven't been in the protest, I support the right to demonstrate, the right to picket. But it is not a must that I, as an individual, or the NARC Kenya party be in all CORD activities. But in Okoa Kenya, IEBC was one of the issues. And as a party, we wrote a letter this year, January, outlining the things that ought to happen in IEBC. I've been of the view that the commission actually should go. And we have made our views known at every turn, but we don't have to be in the demonstration to support what is being proposed. So I actually think that the greatest reason why the IEBC should go home, like yesterday, is that the public has lost confidence in them. We need not have a tribunal to start a lengthy process. We need not start giving evidence, so-and-so did this and that. And there are lots of evidence against some of those commissioners. And as a party, we are aggrieved about the conduct of IEBC. They took away wrongfully our nominated MCA in Garissa. We were in court for over a year before that seat was returned to us, and it was a deliberate thing. Because here is a party writing saying, this is not our candidate. This is not our letter. How can they then proceed and nominate such a person? So they have done very wrong things on small things and on big things as well. Okay. And they have lost the trust of the public.
All right. So is it just the commissioners? Because, there's people who say, well, it's not just simply the commissioners going home. So my question to you today is, if all the commissioners of IEBC go home...
And they should.
And they should, as you say. And then we install new ones. Will we be good to go? Will we be ready for 2017? No. And why aren't we hearing electoral reforms
It's about the commissioner and about commissioners and about other reforms within the body.
Such as?
And the letter we wrote in January, we had outlined some of those things. Of the view that all the senior personnel, all the directors, etc., should undergo a lifestyle audit. When things go wrong, even before you reach the commissioners, there are other gatekeepers. And even when elections are missed, it's about a chain of things that occur.
Yeah.
And I also think that we must stop making ad hoc staff who get hired by the commission almost a pensionable job. It should be a once in a lifetime, because there's so many Kenyan professionals who can man those positions. So once you volunteer, like the jury system where they have the jury system, and you're picked once, that's it. There are other Kenyans to do that job.
Okay.
So whether it is the returning officers, the presiding officers, there is no magic in doing elections.
Okay.
There is no prior training. And even where they've been picked repeatedly, they still undergo a one-day training before they do the job. There are many, many areas we need to tighten. The behavior of political parties and other players and candidates. The law is never enforced, because those who recruit IEBC staff to violate the electoral code are the players, the political parties, and the candidates. We need to see lots of things happening.
Can all of these things happen before 2017? And then we're starting to hear the talk that in order for us to have proper electoral reforms, remove the commissioners and do, make a number of other changes in the electoral system, that we then cannot have an election in August of 2017. And we're hearing,
I think those are people who would want their tenures, or people who would want the current parliament extended through the back door. If you recall, in 2010, the constitution was promulgated. Many, many things were not immediately done. We had a raft of things to do.
Right.
Even the commissioners were themselves interviewed and hired much, much later. We didn't ask about time, because we knew we were time-bound and we had to do these things before a certain date. Even now we are time-bound. The Constitution says that elections are in August of 2016.
Right.
2017.
2017, yes.
Therefore, all the things we have to do can be done, and can be done within this year.
Okay.
And we can be able to have elections next year.
Next year, in August 2017.
Yes.
But then the conversation about the IEBC does not involve NARC Kenya. Essentially, you have court and Jubilee, each contributing their members.
Yes.
And many say this process is not totally inclusive. Or would you like to tell us about...
including NARC Kenya.
Yeah.
We did issue a statement to that effect.
Yeah.
And we said elections are not about CORD or Jubilee. They're about the entire country.
Yeah.
They are not even just about politicians.
Yeah.
They're about even that voter who wants to see that their vote makes a difference. So a conversation about the reform of the electoral system and IEBC should be all-inclusive. And if you look at our Constitution, Article 1 and Article 10, people's participation is a given. And people can exercise their sovereignty through elected representatives or directly.
Okay.
Elected representatives had a chance to do something about IEBC. When Wafula Buke of ODM presented a petition to them, they trashed the petition, so they're out of time. I am of the view, and NARC Kenya is of the view, that the talks about IEBC should be all-inclusive, and it's not about us going to present before Parliament. It's about the talks being outside of Parliament, but having everybody, including parliamentarians, and therefore, we as Kenyans being able to talk as equals, not Parliament summoning us, so that, or inviting us, we give our views to them and they do whatever they wish with those views. It's about Kenyans sitting together and agreeing, negotiating and agreeing this is the package.
Okay.
And that package then goes to Parliament and gets passed. And this, we have precedents of having done that before.
Yes.
We did that at the beginning of the formal review process in 1998 when there were talks in Safari Park and the Constitution of Kenya Review Act 1998 was drafted by the Sulumeti-led committee. So this is possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yet now Kenya is not on that negotiating table.
Many people
what do you
are
intend
not
to do about it?
On the table.
Okay. Are you going to do anything about it
No,
to get yourselves on the table?
We have made our views known. Kenyans have made their views known. It's up to CORD and Jubilee to honor what they're hearing Kenyans saying.
Yeah, but then that sounds like, honestly, allow me to interject for a moment.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're then ceding all of this because you say we will then trust CORD and Jubilee. And some would say, well, you should be clamoring for a seat
So
at
would
that
you like us to
negotiating
issue an
table.
ultimatum, or what are you looking for, Yvonne?
I'm asking what you
No,
would
no,
like
no.
to do.
We are not going to do any such thing.
Yeah.
We are waiting to see how it kicks off.
Do you trust the two of them to have a proper conversation about
I
IEBC?
do not trust anybody who
Yeah.
locks out the other players.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
So for them, for Kenyans to feel that they can trust what is going on, there should be a door open. And it is still not too late. You see? It is still not too late. They can meet and find a mechanism of including, being all inclusive, without making Kenyans feel that your view will not count.
Okay.
You see? And I think lots of people have talked about it. Other political parties have talked about it. Yeah.
But you've been working closely with CORD. Is this
Yeah.
a conversation you've had with
No, we
CORD
haven't had-
leaders
we haven't
about
sat
having
down.
yourselves included? And indeed, not just NARC Kenya,
No.
but like you say, other parties?
We are not looking to be included just as NARC Kenya. We are
Yeah.
looking for an open forum
Right.
where Kenyans of all walks of life can be able to make their views count. In other words, elected representatives do not have a monopoly of wisdom. They should be open up, not asking other people, let us hear what you want and then we decide.
Yeah.
You see, CORD was being told by Jubilee, let it give your views in Parliament. They have been looking for certain safeguards. Those are the same safeguards other Kenyans are looking for. And we are very grateful that CORD has braved it out in the streets to get this opening. But they have to go an extra mile. And Jubilee also has to go an extra mile to make sure that the voices of Kenyans count.
Okay.
But we must first say that the step taken, even for the two protagonists to sit together, we must first acknowledge that and say this is good. And say now listen to what other Kenyans are saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one final question,
Yeah.
Mheshimiwa, and this is a statement, and we've just had it in our news a short
Yeah.
while ago,
Yeah.
from CORD leader Raila Odinga, who says Jubilee is returning the country to the dark days. And then also about the hate speech that we have seen coming
Yeah.
from both sides of the political divide. What are your thoughts on the atmosphere in the country right now? Dark days, freedom of expression versus hate speech. What do you think about that?
I'm of a similar view that the Jubilee administration in most occasions is behaving like the constitution is not there, like the constitution does not exist. The manner in which they dealt with the demonstrations by CORD is reminiscent of the Kanu days, because it's up to the government of the day. It's up to the law enforcement agencies to ensure that they provide security, and if anybody breaks the law, they apprehend them. We had demonstrations during the Kibaki time. We didn't see people getting beaten up. Not that all the demonstrations were, in the view of the government, meritorious, but you provide the facility for people to demonstrate, you escort them. If they are lawbreakers, you pick them up and show people that the law has to be followed, and then you protect the lives, the dignity, the bodily integrity of Kenyans, and also property. And I want to say very clearly that I watched the first two CORD demonstrations were generally peaceful until police would throw tear gas and the crowds would retaliate with stones. But those skirmishes were confined to the police and the demonstrators. They never spilled over to other Kenyans. But on the third demonstration, at a time when some Jubilee MPs from the Nairobi County swore that they are not going to watch CORD continue with the demonstrations, they'll also bring their people. That's when we saw the looting. How am I to know whether it is those who were swearing who arranged for the looting? Why was there no looting in the first two CORD demos? Could there be somebody outside of those demonstrations trying to bring in thuggery to discredit? These things are happening because the Jubilee administration has failed in its duty. to ensure that there is law and order, not just during demonstrations, but in every day of our lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hate speech, finally?
Hate speech, I think that leaders have a responsibility, whether in government or out of government, or just ordinary Kenyans,
Right.
to speak responsibly, to measure what they utter with their mouths. But I'm also disheartened by the police response. If you look at those charges of the, were they 8 or 9 who were charged? Some of those charges did not disclose any course of action. I actually wonder how the court entertained some of those charges. Some of the charges, other charges, were actually totally merited if you're reading the charge sheet.
Yeah.
When you mix unmerited charges, unmerited, for me, it's a cover-up. You're trying to cover those who really have uttered hate speech by showing it's both sides. And that way, we are making the law against hate speech a joke. What will prevent other Kenyans doing the same and hoping that when they come together and eat together, it becomes a good joke and then maybe the charges will be withdrawn. This matter, the Jubilee administration, the law enforcement agencies have to take the responsibility of leadership a bit more seriously. We must see the law applying without fear or favor to those who are guilty of hate speech, who are inciting violence and hatred among Kenyans. If we don't, then we are headed for a repeat of the skirmishes that we have seen before. And we must not agree to go there as a nation. We need seriousness. And whether you are in opposition or in government, nobody is above the law.
Okay.
We should not entertain hate speech whatsoever. And I would want to hear President Uhuru Kenyatta and my colleague in the opposition and the leader of CORD, Honorable Raila Odinga, telling their supporters, anybody who utters hate speech, not in the name of our party, not in my name.
Okay.
So long as leaders do not come out openly, when those close to them are guilty of hate speech, then we must conclude that they support hate speech.
Okay, and that's a very good way to conclude it. Not in my name.
Yes.
Our conversation here with NARC Kenya leader, Honorable Martha Karua. Thank you for your time and for your thoughts on that. I think Kenyans will be waiting to see if we will see your name amongst some of those applications for the CJ or indeed for any other position that is
Application
available.
for president.
Yes. Application for president 2017.
Yes.
That's what Martha Karua says.
Yes.
Thanks very much for your time.